decided that we're just getting our start in the labor movement, including my good friend Maria Elena Durazo, who was an organizer with the hotel workers back then, including my good friend Gilbert Cedillo, who worked with me at SEIU, including our good friend Antonio Villaraigosa, who was an organizer with the teachers union, including our good friend Karen Bass, who was heading up the Free South Africa movement, including my good friend Anthony Thigpen, who was setting up a new organization called Agenda. So we decided that we needed to seek out someone who was more experienced, had more wisdom, had more knowledge of social movements. And so we reached out to Reverend Lawson, and we set up a very informal group known as the Holman Group, because we would meet at the Holman Church. And the group of us would meet on a regular basis to learn from Reverend Lawson, to learn about how to build movement, how to promote organizing grounded in the philosophy of nonviolence that can galvanize workers to take control of our lives. And so Reverend Lawson's historic contributions to the struggle for civil rights in the South is celebrated nationally. The images you saw of I Am a Man were his historic work in fighting for workers' rights and civil rights and to merging the movements in the South around the philosophy of nonviolence. But his historic role in the city of Los Angeles is actually less known and less celebrated. And so we are so grateful to have his voice and leadership and to appreciate the role that he has played in growing this movement. When I was working here as staff attorney at SEIU, our union was launching the Justice for Janitors campaign, and many within our union said, there is no way you are ever going to be able to organize these janitors. They're undocumented, they don't speak English, they're getting ripped off. How could you possibly organize janitors? There was a group of African American women that were organizing home care workers of Los Angeles. And many in our union said, what a waste of time, what a waste of resources. We have 74,000 home care workers here in Los Angeles working in 74,000 homes. How could you possibly organize them? They've never been in a union. They don't know about their union rights. How could they possibly organize a union? And yet, those two campaigns, the Justice for Janitors and the Home Care Victories, reflected the hope and potential of building a social justice movement right here in Los Angeles. 30 years ago, the California state legislature was flipping back and forth between Republicans and Democrats. 30 years ago, the governor's seat was going back and forth. When Pete Wilson ran for re-election, he grounded his campaign back in the 1990s with an anti-immigrant racist campaign, Proposition 187, to call for the expulsion of 400,000 immigrant children in public schools of the state of California. And Prop 187 won by a commanding majority of voters a little over 20 years ago here in the state of California. In the years to come, voters of California eliminated affirmative action in the state of California, eliminated bilingual education, and passed a whole series of right-wing political initiatives. And what we saw is the awakening of the labor movement here in Los Angeles not only changed the political landscape of Los Angeles, it changed the political landscape in the state of California. And that wasn't by accident. That wasn't like the weather, you know, some days it's hot, some days it's cold, some days it rains. That was through organizing and building power. And what is so crucial in the way we have built power within the labor movement of Los Angeles is that it has been grounded in the fight for racial justice. It has been grounded in the fight for immigrant justice. It has been grounded in the fight for women's equality. That many of these campaigns have been led by women, led by people of color, and it is no accident that that ragtag group of immature activists that met with Reverend Lawson have all gone on to play major roles, that Antonio Villaraigosa went on to become Speaker of the California State Assembly and Mayor of Los Angeles. that Maria Elena Durazo became head of the LA County Federation of Labor and is now running for state senate in this district. That Gilbert Cedillo became leader of this union and went on to serve in the state assembly and state senate, and now is the city council member for this district. That Anthony Thigpen is spearheading California calls a statewide political machine to advance a political progressive agenda in the state of California. That Karen Bass has emerged as one of our strongest champions, going toe-to-toe with Jeff Sessions in the U.S. Congress. So these are the types of leaders who emerge in the midst of struggle, in the midst of fighting back. Here in Los Angeles, we won the $15 minimum wage. This was our fight. It is going to benefit 40% of workers here in the city of Los Angeles. 40% make less than $15 an hour. That was a huge victory for the Labor Community Alliance that we have built. Here in Los Angeles, I see our sisters and brothers from the Black Workers Center, the first Black Workers Center in the country, that is now a model for Black worker organizing throughout the country, and other Black worker centers have sprung up based on that vision for the future. Here we successfully organized car wash workers. Over 30 car washes have been organized right here in Los Angeles, and that has spread to organizing campaigns of car wash workers in Chicago and in New York City. So when we talk about resisting, when we talk about fighting back, Los Angeles is ground zero. And yet, we cannot rest on our laurels. We cannot pretend that everything is fine here in the City of Angels, because everything is not fine in the City of Angels. We still have tremendous economic inequality, tremendous racial injustice, and tremendous exploitation and abuse of women that we read about every single day. And so how we build our labor movement at this critical time in history not only has ramifications for the millions and millions of working people here in Los Angeles and here in the state of California, it has implications for us all throughout the country. It is no accident that the right wing is targeting unions to eliminate the power of working people, because unions stand in the way between unfettered power of the corporate elite and the interests of the vast majority who represent the 99% in this country. It is no accident that they're in the cover of night passing through a horrible tax bill in Congress as we speak, which will lead to massive transference of wealth to the 1% and Wall Street, while stripping basic social services to millions and millions of working people, and will especially have a devastating impact on communities of color. It is no accident that they are whipping up the legacy of slavery and the Confederacy by polarizing our country and by trying to convince white workers that it is in their interest to align with Donald Trump and Wall Street and to betray sisters and brothers who are working right next to them in the shops, in the workplaces, in the factories. So that is the challenges that we face. But what we have seen over the last 30 years is that when we organize together, when we fight together, we win together. That's right. And what happened here in Los Angeles has to be replicated across the country. What happened here in Los Angeles has to be built and expanded to embrace a comprehensive vision of justice, of hope, and of our collective future. So I say to you today that the fight for racial justice is a labor fight. The fight for immigrant rights is a labor fight. The fight for gender equality is a labor fight. And together we will win. Thank you. Yeah.